What's a warning sign society is ignoring right now? Everyone keeps thumping their chest about how they have common sense and no one else does, but no one focuses on how nobody has common courtesy anymore either. I really despise how people throw around the statement, respect is earned, not given. There's just not really any nuance to it. If they mean that trust and admiration come with time and experience, then that's fine. But too often, the way it's practiced is I don't have to give a rip about treating you decently if you're not someone I know personally. Regular people from just about any socioeconomic level, age, and background are horrific to strangers in traffic, waitstaff, in restaurants, or really anyone in customer service. Air rage and self entitled rudeness towards flight attendants and other travelers is at an all time high. Collectively, this behavior from the worst of us is pushing everyone towards the edge of something, and I don't know how being polite can pull us back. Meekness is a dirty word to too many of us. I know, right? Like, the problem is we've all become our own main characters, and everyone else is just like an unskippable ad we have to sit through. Story 2. Weather is getting less predictable and experiencing greater extremes, and extreme weather events that were outliers 50 years ago are becoming normal. In California, our fires are the perfect example of this. We've grown used to our annual fire season. The fires that we are having every year were historically once in 50-year events. Experts started warning us these fires would start encroaching on urban areas, something that we've never had to deal with. Last year, near me, we experienced major destruction in Altadena and Pacific Palisades. I live very close to Altadena, and having driven through there, it's simply unbelievable to see entire housing developments just wiped out. And the Palisades fire was so much larger. Story 3. The billionaires are proudly and openly participating in and controlling the government. The ultra-wealthy have always been in control of most governments, but have always had to at least pretend that the public had some control and throw a few benefits to the bottom 90% of us. They now realize that they don't have to hide their involvement anymore and don't even have to give the impression that they're trying to help the working class. Story 4. Mental health. People's psychology has been weaponized against them, and a lot of people obviously have a hard time coping properly with the level of instant gratification and access to various content the internet offers. We clearly have a cruel relationship with ourselves and the internet, and some people clearly don't have effective walls or coping mechanisms for it. Story 5. That the US economy is about to tank and lose a lot of people a lot of money, especially out of retirement accounts. Everybody collectively breathed a sigh of relief when the economy didn't immediately tank in the spring. But what happened was that a lot of companies stockpiled before the tariffs really hit. That stockpile is getting ever lower. The correction is coming, and it is going to cost a lot of people a lot of money. Story 6. The impact of AI on learning institutions and human development in general. The warning sign is from colleges. Students are unable to do basic assignments, and they no longer read for homework. Students don't write anymore, to a point where writing is being taken out of education. We're going anti-legislation during a massively important time. Algorithms are addictive and manipulative, yet we're letting them functionally raise our children. It's going to be bad, y'all. Story 7. The establishment is bending over backwards to rug pull the following essential services that endeavor to create a well-informed electorate: free press, public education, state-sponsored scientific research, establishment of a state-preferred religion, denial of facts stated by local and local power that don't lick their boots, increased taxes levied on consumers, family planning. They want you poor, dumb, motivated by feeding your 5 kids, and too tired to do anything other than labor to support your family. They want all the specialized work that has traditionally been reserved for specialized humans to be taken by AI. The middle class has been shrinking for decades, but there are still too many of us for them to have our nuts in a vice. They do not want you to have a ladder you can climb. Story 8. Just to name a few, everyone is so fixated on the dopamine drip from their phones that they have no ability to process serious information before moving on to the next fix. This has created a very serious accountability problem. Decades of vilifying education have made the average person dangerously easy to manipulate. The lack of financial literacy in core education is creating increasingly dangerous time bombs due to people and organizations exploiting that ignorance. Vilifying intelligence and education is a tactic for controlling people through forced ignorance, a big red flag that's being ignored. AI is a snake eating its own tail without a UBI or ULI. People need things to do, and if AI removes wages from consumers, they can't consume. We have not taken happiness seriously enough. Without even looking at available metrics, it seems that people are epically miserable right now, and it's going to have a really bad end. Greed has gotten absurdly out of control and is the reason for a lot of the problems we have, including many I have already mentioned. Climate change, but that has been going on for a while. All in all, we have missed the point of life in a lot of ways and are ripping each other apart either because someone got us all worked up, like how can y'all get all excited and get your dog super excited too, or because we are greedily screwing people over for quote-unquote things. It takes a painful struggle for us to chill the hell out and realize we're making a mistake. When this all comes to a head, hopefully there is some collective growth. Story 9. The rampant belief in conspiracy theories, false news articles, and hoaxes. People have no trust in any source for facts, so when you point to scientists or journalists, the excuse is that they're bought and paid for, corrupt, or part of the conspiracy. So, what do you do when there is literally no avenue to prove a thing? There is no fact anymore. We are in a post factual society. There are two groups now, those who still believe in an independent truth and those who do not. It is crippling. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the next big scientific discovery to be a celebrity's hot take on something they heard on a podcast. Story 10. The worldwide epidemic of loneliness, the collapse of third spaces, and the general rising cost of living has left many people who aren't currently in school unable to make or maintain social and romantic relationships. The outcry over ChatGPT a few weeks ago is one symptom of this. There are some people who are always going to turn to a chatbot into a waifu, but there are a lot more people turning to this placebo of emotional validation because they have no path to that very real need from a genuine source. Story 11. The younger generation is being raised on screens. I know it's always been the case that older generations talk about kids these days, but this is different. I have friends who I otherwise respect laughing about how they never see their teenagers because they're always in the room on their phone and always with AirPods in when they are around. Parents themselves are distracted by screens, so there's no reason they should think anything of it. I see families out to dinner with the kids buried so deep in their screen that they don't even order their own food. In my parents' groups, I see parents who withdraw their kids from school because they are too anxious to go. Kids whose only friends are through gaming platforms. Kids without any sense of empathy because they've never had to interact with another person in any meaningful way. Everyone else might as well be an NPC. We can celebrate that teens are doing less of all the bad things that were previously hallmarks of problematic teen behavior. But it's not because they're making smarter decisions, it's because they don't have an opportunity for those decisions to come up. An entire generation is being robbed of the human experience that literally every other generation that ever existed had. I remember people talking about the harms of kids and TV when I was growing up, but this is actually near constant without escape. The physical isolation, the anxiety and depression, the bombardment of unrestricted media, and the lack of social skills. What happens when these kids are grown? This is all unknown. Story 12. Society is moving away from permanent ownership and towards temporary usage for a higher cost in the long term. You don't own movies anymore, you subscribe to Netflix. You can't buy a house due to the high interest rates and flat housing prices, so you rent. This is a reliance on a capitalistic, incentive-driven gigacorp for things you should own yourself, which can be ripped out from under you without consequence or warning. You only have access to these things because the incentives are aligned with the provider to let you. If those incentives are no longer aligned that way, say goodbye to the things you rely on. Story 13. The more I've watched the opening scene where Jeff Daniels gives a brutal answer as to why America is not the greatest, the more I think it's something more MAGA mouth breathers need to watch. Other countries are blowing our doors off, and America is starting to look like the person who doesn't need that second trip to the buffet. It's not a warning sign, but an observation. Also, I met a neighbor who just retired from the Secret Service. He said having the National Guard armed with weapons is a horrible idea. He gives it less than 6 months until they shoot someone without probable cause and won't be held accountable for their actions. He said if that happens, crap is about to get real because the administration is going to look the other way. Story 14. How do you keep a hatred for a particular group of people going for 75 years? You teach children in schools to hate. Those children then grow into adults. Their children then go to the same schools and learn the same hatred. It's worked in the Middle East for decades, and it's now starting in the US too. PragerU is creating animated children's programming stating that slavery wasn't that bad. This is what children in the US are starting to learn now. If you think racism is bad now, wait until the US gets to where the Middle East currently is. I don't even think it will take 75 years. Story 15. The replies in this thread are deeply concerning. It's a gross display of illiteracy where most of the replies seem to be about things I don't like about modern times, rather than displaying even a basic understanding of the premise of the thread. People seem very keen to just read and reimagine whatever the text said to suit their own interests, and this trend is extremely destructive. The amount of times in online discourse where I have to insist a poster actually read what they're replying to in full, rather than just start responding after reading often less than half the text, is also deeply worrying. If something is worth responding to, it's worth reading it properly and making sure you understand what is being communicated. Story 16. Bad influence, grifting from ignorant people. Grifting comes in all forms, but I find the adults grifting with books, podcasts, and other garbage content to be the worst offenders. Why? They're influencing adults into believing in a false reality. It's the main reason we're in this awful timeline. People literally believe taking an antiparasitic would cure a viral infection, and as a result, nothing happened except that they remained sick, and There was potential liver/kidney damage, a loss of money, and some even passed away. It wasn't that this was the problem. The problem is that people believed it and continued to do so. This is just one tiny example. Story 17. Young men are deciding that education, family, and any sense of community beyond their bros is not worth the effort. By a weird bit of social engineering, the socialization skills that are pressed onto girls are the same ones that tend to promote doing well in school. Boys are diagnosed with autism and ADHD at much higher rates, and while it is known that it is harder to diagnose girls, boys are often given these labels, medicated, and written off as average or poor students. The rates of college acceptance are getting crazy skewed, with some co-ed institutions approaching almost 60-40 female to male. This leads to a secondary concern and social phenomenon called male dropout. This phenomenon is that once a space becomes both a majority women and often run by women, men stop using that space because it is considered a woman's job or a woman's space. Teaching is the most obvious example of this, where the number of male teachers has cratered below the high school level and is dropping even there. Quite frankly, many boys and young men are starting to see education as a thing for women. Similarly, the dominance of Asmongold, Andrew Tate, and of course Joe Rogan has given many young boys a very skewed approach to what a relationship should be. It's true for both men and women that young people do not look at their parents' relationships as something as they want. I'm an elder millennial. My parents are late baby boomers, but growing up, I basically wanted a relationship similar to my parents because even when they fought, they clearly loved each other and complemented each other. That said, my parents, for how liberal they raised me and my sister, had a traditional home and gender roles. My dad is a provider type, and my mom carried an unequal share of the emotional, mental load of keeping the house running. I am married, and I totally understand why women do not want marriages like boomers had. I still think that being in a long-term committed relationship is fulfilling, rewarding, and beneficial for most people. However, as women have decided that staying with guys who won't be equal partners is not worth it, many young men have decided that partnering up is a scam, or at least that their abilities and level of effort won't be seen as good enough for a woman to want to be with them. Once somebody makes this decision, it's easy to get captured by the incel or player communities. Dating isn't the only way young men are rejecting family. More men are rejecting having kids or being involved in raising kids. Young men struggle more and face greater social stigma for not moving out of their parents' homes, but in many cases, they are also not contributing to those homes meaningfully either. They are living at home but minimally interacting with family. This is bad, and the only thing being done is mocking it. Just as young men have given up on education and family, they are minimally involved in their communities. The data shows that women volunteer more, know more of their neighbors, participate in local government at higher rates, and home ownership is moving towards being dominated by working women as well. Meanwhile, the communities that young men have turned to tend to be online and more willing to discuss open violence against their neighbors. This is the militiafication or gangification of a generation. It's bad and it's scary. I don't know how we fix some of this stuff. I don't know how you convince young men that women not wanting to be second-class citizens doesn't make their lives cheaper or worse. Story 18. In the USA, people who get elected are allowed to pick the people who will vote for them by rigging the electoral district boundaries. Whereas in Canada, for instance, the electoral boundaries are set by an independent commission. The number of seats and their locations are also set by the independent commission, and that commission enforces election finance regulations that exclude BS like super political action organizations and corporations being deemed persons for the purpose of an election, all of which makes for climate change solutions that are subordinate to the desires of the ultra-wealthy. And just in case you haven't noticed the change in weather, the floods, hurricanes, and wildfires, climate change is real. And you are gone between the years from pledging allegiance to a frickin' flag. Meanwhile, an angry, lying, wealthy, vituperous, revenge-filled, morally bankrupt, serially bankrupt is in charge, working diligently to make further quote-unquote elections unnecessary in his lifetime. Let the downvotes roll, idiots. Story 19. Well, the fact that I've been a retail clerk almost all my life with a useless associate degree in graphic design, and I seem to be the only person in America who knows this country is a civil oligarchy, and I'm currently inventing actual affordable housing with no help from anyone isn't a great sign. Also, the only hope of making it happen is that I have to leave America, as this country is against affordable housing in general. Oh, you all complain about oligarchs taking over, you all complain about housing being unaffordable, but not nearly enough of you are going to mobilize to help me with my plans. Every time I even discuss it, I'm either ignored or no one wants to really discuss it. It's like the very conversation upsets your brain. It's not even about the steps it would take to create affordable housing, but the very concept of what affordable living even looks like. Story 20. Wall Street is pretty much ignoring that AI is giving off the indicators of a typical financial bubble. The value of AI is still ultimately unknown, and it's dangerous to let a bunch of people in the financial system known for being morons, day traders, keep insisting that the stocks associated with AI are worth what they're selling for. Personally, I see the issue of AI as this. No one promoting it right now thinks it has limitations other than the ones associated with it being used in the physical world. So they assume it will solve everything. Accounting, media, video games, and more are seen as fields where people are somewhat removed because of AI. If that's right, they make billions and the markets will tumble from mass unemployment. If they're wrong, the markets will tumble from them betting too much on it and they'll desperately hire people back, which will heavily slow them down. I'm no financial expert, I just follow some, and the sentiment right now is that we're heading towards another 2008. Story 21. How they're being emotionally manipulated by what they see and hear on the internet. How enraged people are becoming over minor things, but how they're also becoming increasingly passive by burnout or overstimulation to injustice, harm, real hate, and inhumanity towards others. How easily they believe misleading snippets, titles, or people whose opinions are popular but not supported by evidence. How they don't care about the truth anymore, only how things seem or what is convincing or mostly repeated. Story 22. Illegal immigration. Most people would rather not upend their entire lives, pay thousands of dollars to people smugglers, or risk their life, etc. If there weren't compelling reasons to move, for example, societal collapse, government capture by cartels, environmental breakdown, etc., there's a lot of right-wing blame without realizing that shipping the migrants elsewhere, building walls, and employing thousands of thugs to find them isn't actually going to fix the problem. Of course, you could argue that that is kind of the point of the policies. Story 23. How many dangerous things people are not realizing will have near permanent effects. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram videos are really overloading people's attention spans and dopamine. The horrendous state education is within all aspects. Just how bad the job market is getting due to the failure of policies that will protect the common worker. How society is polarizing into rich and poor to a disastrous level where industries will collapse without realizing it. Just look at the video game industry, where, along with other factors, you have games produced with hundreds of millions of dollars in budget that fail to even break, while even companies still fail to listen what the average gamer wants. All the failed policies and collapse of industries just makes me want to scroll through more videos of people trying to make a living by dancing. Wait, is that the problem? Story 24. Engineering buildings for climate change and weather events like tornadoes and hurricanes. Y'all engineers rebuild the same houses out of toothpicks in Tornado/Hurricane Alley, and a year later, it gets turned back into sticks again and again and again. Meanwhile, insurance companies would save tens of billions of dollars if a hurricane or tornado building code was created. Like, why not 3D print solid concrete domes instead of sticks? Instead of traditional glass, why not use acrylics or plexiglass? Plastic windows are cheaper than glass, SMH. And most importantly, oil companies profit from plastic-infused windows and plastic-infused concrete, and insurance companies would save $1 trillion long term. Story 25. Every industry with a profit margin is going insane trying to find ways to replace junior hires with some kind of AI solution. But within a generation of this behavior, nobody's going to know how to do anything anymore. We'll all be prompting the AI for solutions. If you can't get a paying job in whatever the field is, why bother studying it? And as seniors quit with no one to replace them, do we just rely on our AI overlords to guide what ought to be done? AI is here to stay, but I still think we are at least halfway through a bubble that is going to collapse. I think it's comparable to the dot-com bubble in the 90s. Story 26. This happens in many countries, but in the US especially, corruption is incredibly rampant across many sectors of the government. Corrupt judges, corrupt politicians, and corporations that can basically buy more and more benefits via lobbyists. It's absurd. There's more than enough manpower from the common people to overthrow this, but one of the tactics those in power use is to try and get the middle class and below to be close enough to fine, but struggling enough that they want to focus on their own affairs rather than the country at large. And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 27. It's more so the USA society and non-hobby and non-small business spheres, but the de minimis USA ending and the consequences if USPS charges that flat fee per package, $80 USD to $200 USD depending on country of origin. It's up in the air right now what's going to be charged, if at all, since the people working there also don't know what's going to happen on the 29th, all relatively well known in other countries. Multiple businesses, foreign or otherwise, have stopped shipping to the USA, and the potential fees that USPS may charge are going to collapse the world economy, or at the very least, damage it heavily. Forwarders and multiple people whose businesses depend on the USA customer base, etc. Many places depend on the USA as a stop or place of profit, and the issue is that the world has a system in place where the USA being duty-free for items at $800 and below is built into place. The administration is trying to force other countries to collect the fee for them, which is unprecedented. The USA does not currently have a system in place to calculate fees per item and collect them. This can lead to multiple bounced packages and items rotting in the warehouse because no one wants to potentially pay 80 USD to collect a 5 USD package, nor do foreign businesses want to deal with the hassle and an angry US customer surprised by the fees. If it were just tariffs, people would grumble but continue business, but the other issues and uncertainty mean that multiple post services of other countries have suspended service to the USA. Or maybe nothing major will happen on the 29th if it flops. USPS does not have the manpower to collect or enforce, even with customs hiring new people. It's still millions of packages to check for a new staff that probably has little to no training alongside senior management cuts, but it's surprisingly less known than it should be, anecdotally. I've met multiple people this week who haven't even realized that de minimis is ending for everyone, not just China and Hong Kong from May. Story 28. The breakdown of the ability to communicate respectfully with people we disagree with. The amount of dehumanization going on and how little it takes for it to start and how hard people double down on it, usually while complaining about feeling dehumanized, is actually insane. It's like a huge portion of us have this weird expectation that somebody else is supposed to fix everything, while we smugly watch with our arms crossed. But the reality is we all have to find each other again, and it starts with not letting ourselves use bad excuses like reciprocation to lower our own standards for our own behavior. If someone else's behavior is all it takes for your values to change, they were never values. It's easy to do the right thing when the sun is out and you like the folks around you. Doing it in hard times for people you don't is where the concept of integrity lies. Story 29. Earlier this year, we passed the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold all those nations agreed to try to avoid in the Paris Climate Change Accord. Meanwhile, we are experiencing perpetual forest fires. They are burning both summer and winter these days. Decreased winter snowpack and receding glaciers to the point where our reservoirs are no longer reserving much fresh water these days. More desertification, crop insurance payouts, and inflation, especially for beef, as farmers are needing to cull their herds since they are no longer able to grow feed. The passing and bleaching of coral reefs, we will likely see them disappear in the next couple of years. Story 30. People being forced to group up behind ideologies and ideas, from dumb social media stunts to politics. There are people assaulting strangers, bullying and setting and ending relationships because of things they are socially pressured to stand behind. This pressure comes from the understanding of the ideology or idea in others around them, which generally revolves around, what I am for is good, everything else is bad. If you do not believe 100%, you are bad. Has led to things like kids chewing laundry detergent pods, people losing careers, families, and lives. Do the others in that group help that person when that happens? No. Instead of helping that person, they use the story of that person's misfortune to fuel the ideology even further. Story 31. Highly incentivized algorithmic tunneling, precisely calibrated to change behaviors, change personalities, and create disrealities and delusions to influence spending behaviors, family, community, equilibrium, and natural survival mechanisms in each demographic. In 2015, the Kuala Lumpur elections were tampered with by Cambridge Analytica, data-driven algorithms via highly incentivized and divisive social media messaging across multiple platforms. This set a template to deploy highly specific algorithms to change normal human behavior and disrupt critical thinking systems. It wasn't enough, and by 2016, highly paid troll farms using these targets entered massive marketing demographic data into unregulated, incentivized ad systems for all the big sites to change the face of America and the world, drawing people into conspiracies, focused spending, and divesting of wealth and assets and often dangerous behaviors. This was outlined in several reports by the Department of Homeland Security and the United Nations from 2016 to 2022 and were on the public record as searchable primary sources. These reports detail who is funding the narratives online and where they're coming from. They detail who is being paid to deploy these marketing and messaging campaigns and who is being paid to create media as well. Right before the election in 2024, the DOJ released a report on Russian influence alone, despite this being way huger, with economic leaders spending to influence politics far more than countries and leadership do. On a Project Doppelganger and a Project Good Old America, which were designed from 2022 to 2024 to influence American voting behavior but also separate families, draw lines between the old and young, and ultimately lead seniors to an early death. They told poor young men that conservative values and intimacy would transform them into superheroes, told young women that men were the enemy, then aimed to see everyone brainwashed and impoverished by bad spending and cutting off loved ones due to pretend political hot-button issues. This, and all this has passed before our eyes. Your ears were stuffed by sand. The sand said, you are special. You know things despite never learning things, that you understand secrets. That what you learned in Sunday school wasn't true, compassion was evil, Jesus was a capitalist, dictator, and millionaire, and you are so very important and powerful. All to milk you, drive everything you loved previous to 2016, and make your loved ones hate and leave you, all for an algorithm. Story 32 looks around pretty much everything. But to list a few, changing global climate patterns due to years and years of barely regulated, it's not just been enough in the amount of time production factories to feed the ever-growing and ever-ceasing demand for goods and products. Such goods and products included in the overall picture, and you're not going to like this because it does implicate you and all of us, really. Fast fashion, Starbucks coffee, anything that requires a plastic container to be made to house it for sale. Large-scale farming and meat production, large-scale electric-powered solutions. Sure, it's less damaging, but it still puts a strain on limited resources. Those batteries require certain minerals that are not infinitely available, and recycling them isn't easy or possible, such as your Tesla, your Rivian, Polestar, Toyota Prius, etc. Your smartphone is also included in this. Use of fuel-powered anything, driving large-scale equipment, processing procedures, etc. There's a lot more, but then we'd be here all day, and this is just for global warming concerns. But a lot of this is what allows us to live our life as we currently do. So it's no easy feat to find better alternatives that would do society good in the future because many of us in society want good in our way of life right now. Story 33. Digital dependency and fixation to social media are becoming more and more common. It's a disturbing number of people who cannot get through life without their faces glued to their smartphone screens, scrolling or consuming social media content. They're everywhere. Fewer and fewer people connect with each other in any way that is genuine or meaningful. Everything is being recorded, photographed, or even stupid stuff, and then uploaded as social media content for likes, comments, subscribers, and followers. Even got people filming such things as marriage proposals. So many people out there are consuming stupid social media content instead of going out and having real experiences and developing friendships. The number of people who give up control of their minds to politicians, political parties, and influencers is quite scary. Similarly, the number of people who cannot tell the difference between reality and illusion or fact and opinion is alarming. So many people now seem miserable, unhappy, and irrationally angry, and it's getting harder and harder to find people who are actually genuine and not fake. If you ask older people in their 70s or 80s what they regret most in life, most will probably tell you that they spent too much time working and not enough time with their kids, families, or friends. The time is going to come when the big regret of older people is that they spent too much time online and let life simply pass them by. Story 34. How dependent we are on the internet and how it's destroying us while simultaneously advancing us. It's not even a joke at this point. So many mental health issues are social media related. The traditional relationship standards have changed drastically for the better and worse at the same time. Children especially are flooded with simulation from devices that over time make them stupid and dependent on the internet to even think for them. Students don't even have to think for themselves now because ChatGPT does it for them. We are literally destroying our own species from the inside of our own technological innovations. If we use the internet purely for advancing our species and restricting it to non-essential services, we would actually be able to save our brains from all the trouble and hurt the internet brings and thrive the way we were supposed to. But the world isn't ready for that conversation. Story 35. Old thread, but what the heck? It's looking more and more like we're heading towards surveillance states everywhere and nobody seems to be talking about it. The UK just passed the Online Safety Act, where websites are now forced to have age verification either through facial scans or by providing a picture of some sort of ID. To give you an idea of how stupid this is, there was an app called the T app where women could discuss men they were dating. Not going to touch on that subject, but to get access, you had to scan your face and or ID to prove you were a woman, and the devs swore it was completely safe. It wasn't, and over 70,000 women had their selfies, IDs, and things like IP addresses leaked. With the internet being the internet, it took about 5 minutes before people started doxing these women, and with websites that have millions of users now being forced to age verify all of them, we are one data breach away from a freaking disaster. The EU is pushing to break end-to-end encryption by scanning all private communication and images before sending it. Once again, this is a massive security risk. The usefulness is very questionable, especially when compared to the resources required to implement something like this. And politicians, corporations, and quote-unquote important people are all exempt from these reasons. Like politicians and corporate workers can't be tempted, bought, threatened, or blackmailed into using this as a loophole to dodge a trillion-dollar quote-unquote security system. The US and Canada are also pushing similar laws, and to nobody's surprise, it's to keep the children safe. Story 36. That public attention is easy to control and that outrage is so simple to manufacture that it can be done right in front of you. In the past decade or so, there have been a lot of controversies popping up involving many well-known public figures that lead to search results being crowded with things like famous actor says DEI is evil. only for the truly heinous stuff about that same person to get buried because every single news article and TikTok reel will be about the latest soundbite. It's something that's been very evident the more chronically online we get, and people pay more and more attention to the internet when it comes to views. These kinds of stunts may or may not be intentional, and it's pretty hard to prove, but it's insane if you look at the trend of how someone like that can go from being hated for actual atrocities to being gossiped about for something that is very ignorant, but ultimately more of a talking point than a straight up inhumane act. I get that the internet's collective attention span is short and memes now have a half life of 3 days, but it's very concerning that people will completely move past serious controversy just because of this weird recency bias that gets exploited by news media and what I'm assuming are very crafty PR firms or even just the people who own news outlets. If we had more of a push for people to think critically about the stuff they consume online, it'd be harder to pull this off, but sadly, I've seen it happen like every month at this point. We need more things like media literacy and critical thinking to be able to combat large corporations and oligarchs trying to control our attitudes towards things. Story 37. We've missed a lot of warning signs already. We were warned about global warming and climate change over 20 years ago, and now people are complaining about wildfires and heat waves. In 2016, we were warned about the deplorables. Hillary was right. All of those 35 felonies, but Americans voted for Trump anyway. Now, the warning signs are the people Trump is firing and the institutions he is cutting funding from. Story 38. This one was difficult for me to learn and painful to have to undo the damage. Bills. If you receive a bill, open it right away, look at it, have an idea of what you owe, and then pay it at a set time every month or right away. Never let bills go unopened. I know I'm not the only one who ever did this, but I knew I was broke right now, so I let the bills pile up without looking at them. That earned me some late fees and put me in collections a couple of times. Meanwhile, I was going to see movies or buying drinks, etc. It literally took me 7 years to finally get the collections off my credit report. Story 39. In terms of a relationship, criticism, too many people don't know the difference between airing your grievances in a healthy way and being critical in a negative sense. For example, I would appreciate it if we could trade off nights on who does the cooking, or I think that shirt might be better for another occasion, are fair criticisms. Saying, you never cook, I'm not your mother, or you don't even try to dress up, you look sloppy, is not productive and creates resentment. Good criticism always presents a solution or an opportunity to compromise. Bad criticism belittles the other person and shuts them down. No one likes thinking the person they love thinks very little of them. It hurts and destroys people's self-esteem, and that's hard to get back once it's gone. The clothing example is irrelevant. I was in a rush on mobile, but I'm glad I could help some people. This is something I've struggled with, and it's made my relationships with everyone a lot better to recognize when I'm nitpicking or when I really have something to say. Story 40. If someone wants to break up with you, let them. Also, let it be known, this wasn't something I've always lived by, but rather eventually became. I was a person that would want to hold on to the relationship not because it was good for me or the other person, but because I was so afraid of being alone. I was a person who would bend and beg, I can change, we can work it out, ad nauseum. I was and still am in some ways codependent. For a long time, I had zero self-esteem, about the same level of confidence in myself, my abilities, and my worth. I was constantly measuring my worth by what I thought others saw in me. Then one day, everything changed. It wasn't a slow process or something that crept up, but an epiphany. Why am I trying to hold on to someone who doesn't want me? I'm looking for a lifeboat, but I kept grabbing anchors. I told her, I'm done. Goodbye. She laughed, told me I would come crawling back, and to be fair, this is what I would have normally done. But a switch flipped, and somehow I went from needing someone to validate me to needing to be, well, me. That was when I was in my 30s. I wish I would have learned to like myself sooner, but better late than never. The funny thing about that change in thought is that it changed every aspect of my life. I'm so much happier in my 40s than I was in my 20s. I actually met someone in my life who adores me and I adore her. She's good for me. So for anyone who may be in the same boat I was in, even though you might not be able to see the shore, it's there, it's within your reach. Eventually, you're going to find out you're a lot more important than you think you are. The change may be slow or it may be sudden, but be ready because it's going to knock your socks off once you realize you deserve someone who wants you. Story 41. Boredom at your job is a big red flag that you shouldn't ignore. Don't buy into the common saying that everyone hates their job or your job isn't supposed to be fun. That's hogwash. Your job won't be fun all the time. This is true. You will have times where you will do grunt work and tedious things that you wish someone else would do and possibly can if you get high enough in a company. My warning to you is if you feel bored and unhappy all the time, if there is nothing in the job that is fulfilling, you might find that negativity spilling over into your work, and that is something you don't want to have. Your work matters. Customers depend on it even if you don't quite see it. So if it's not working out, come up with a plan to make things better while at the same time not burning any bridges at your current job. Story 42. If your partner often accuses you of cheating when you know you most certainly are not cheating, it just might be possible that your partner is cheating. If you try to ask your partner if they are cheating and they become instantly angry and make you feel bad for asking the question, it just might be possible that your partner is cheating on you. But the most important thing is to not waste your life trying to stay with the wrong person for you. It's okay to break up if you've identified that you're not a good fit. Moving on hurts, but you owe it to your future self and your true soulmate who's out there somewhere to keep looking. Hope that helps. Story 43. The hardest lesson I've learned in life is how to recognize that a relationship is failing and let it go. There were a number of warning signs that I missed. We didn't laugh as much when we hung out. We didn't spend as much time together. We fought a lot. She seemed to care a lot less about the things I thought were important. And frankly, I probably stopped caring too much about the priorities in her life. All of this seems incredibly obvious in hindsight, but at the same time, it was all mixed up with a lot of really complicated emotions. We'd been together for over 4 years at that point. Due to the circumstances of our relationship, I had to make a lot of sacrifices at the beginning stages that I felt on some level I was owed to be emotionally reimbursed for. Yes, I realize this is another huge red flag. One of the worst things you can do is carry on in a relationship with someone, romantic or even just a friendship, when it's not working. Ultimately, believe me, both parties will be happier without the relationship dragging both people down. Story 44. Save your money and have an idea about what long-term expenses you want to buy. Don't just think, well, I have this money now and this costs X, so I can get it. It's better to wait until you have a solid foundation to buy that new truck you want, or gaming computer, or whatever. I went to the Navy out of high school and I got out and came home and everyone was 23 with $30,000 vehicles, ATVs, and all this crazy stuff. I'm 26 and just getting to where I want. I still have ambitions and things I like to own that I can use throughout my life. But I'm not to that place yet where I can spend on hobbies and dreams. I'm getting there. I just bought some land that I'm working on. I'm doing so much of it manually to save money, and people are giving me a hard time, telling me I have money in the bank so I should spend on getting the land ready, but that would screw me over when it came time to build. Don't let people nag you about not spending your money. People don't always look at it like that money is already spent, but it is. Story 45. If your friends tell you that you being with your SO is a bad idea for any reason, trust me when I say they are right. 90% of the time, if more than one of your friends doesn't like the relationship you're in, then you really need to step back and ask yourself, is this a good idea? If they tell you that you are the problem in this, then it's even more important that you reassess. I've been on both sides of that coin. I received a scathing letter at the time of my marriage, and the worst thing I've done is not listen. Just recently, I had to write the same letter to a friend of mine and got a reply disturbingly like the one I wrote. My friend was right at the time, and I can't shake the sinking feeling in my gut at the thought of my other friends' relationship. Also, remember this, people never change. People don't change what they are for any reason unless it's a direct benefit to them, and it's a matter of time before they revert back to their true colors. It's a matter of time before they show what they really are. If you think someone cleaned up their act, wait long enough and you'll see what other aspect of their lives has become a mess in the meantime. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.